So here we are at the end of the 47 centimeters. Your piece should look something like this. Okay, if we measure, it's approximately 47 centimeters. Okay, so this is what the front looks like. If we zoom in a little bit closer, we can see all the detail. And if we turn it around and look at the back, we can see it looks something like that. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to begin to shape the armholes for this front piece here. So let's begin. Before we start our armholes, we have to make sure that we're all on the same page. Okay, so we've done our 47 centimeters. And the next thing we have to note is that we finished with a wrong side row, meaning the row that we just completed was a wrong side row. And we're now beginning on a right side row. Okay, so once again to determine that, if the pattern looks, the front of the pattern is your right side row, right? And the back of your pattern with these purls in the centerpiece here is your wrong side row. So we completed the wrong side row. We turn it around. We are now starting with the right side row. All right, so here's our pattern with our knit stitches. Okay. So we're now starting on our right side row, and as for myself, for me, I ended off on the 6th row. So we're still working in the pattern, okay, rows 1 to 16, but depending on your yarn size or your needle size, you may end off on a different row. Again, we just have to make sure that we end at 47 centimeters. No matter the size of the sweater that you're making, 47 centimeters. Okay, so for me, I've ended off on the 6th row, and I'm now working my right side row, which is the 7th row in the pattern for me. For you, it'll be on whichever number that you finished off, the next one you will be working on. So again, continuing in the pattern. We're just going to make some slight changes for the armholes though, and that's what we're going to do now. So now what we're going to do is for the next 2 rows, we're going to cast off stitches. Okay, so for me the next 2 rows are row 7, which I'm working on now, and then row 8. So for those next 2 rows I will cast off, because I'm making a small, I will cast off 5 stitches. If you're making a medium, you will cast off 5. If you're making a large, a 5, an extra large, a 6, and an extra large, a 6. Okay, so for me I will cast off 5 stitches in the pattern. You will cast off whichever amount for your size. Cast off the amount of stitches in the pattern for the beginning of the next 2 rows. So here's the beginning of our first row. I will cast off 5 stitches. Okay, so to do that, do a knit stitch, a knit stitch, 2 knit stitches, like this. And then pull, this is the working loop, pull the first loop over the working loop on this needle. Pull it over the needle like that. So just a basic knitting cast off. So 1, okay, we'll do it 5 times for myself. Okay, your second one. One more knit, complete the knit stitch, take the previous stitch and pull it over. Three, complete the knit stitch, take the previous stitch, pull it over. 4, and one more time, take the previous stitch and pull it over. 5. Okay, so I've done 5, I've casted off 5 stitches from the pattern for me because I'm making a small, right? You will do the amount that you require. So now we will work in the pattern as usual, okay? So I will continue the 7th row. I will work all the way to the end of the pattern, and I will complete the 7th row. Then I will turn the work around and begin the 8th row. For the 8th row, which is my 2nd row, I will cast off 5 again, stitches, and then I will complete the 8th row like normal. So that's what you will do as well. But again, depending on whichever rows you are, you will complete those next 2 rows, casting off the amount of stitches you need to cast off for your size at the beginning of each of your next 2 rows. Okay, make sense? Alright, so I will meet you at the end of those 2 rows. For me, I will meet you at the end of my row 8. So I've turned the work around and I'm ready to begin my next row. So you know you've done everything correctly so far if you have the correct number of stitches and the pattern follows itself. 2 pearls, 2 knits, or 2 knits, 2 pearls, right? So for me, for a small, I should have 99 stitches. For me, a small is 99, medium is 107, a large is 117, an extra large is 123, and an extra large is 133. So basically, all you did was reduce the total number of stitches that we've been working on by 10. Okay? So the 2 rows we worked on reduced the number of stitches by 10, 5 on each side, right? Make sense? Okay. So now for the next part. So here we are on our next part. What the instructions say to do is work 6 rows. Well, 6 for me because I'm doing a small. If you're doing a medium, you're 8, a large, you're 10, an extra large, 10, and an extra large, 12 rows. So for me, because I'm doing a small, I'm going to work 6 rows, and I'm going to decrease the first stitch at each end of every row. Okay? So that means the beginning of every row and the end of the row. We will do 1 decrease. Okay, so you'll know if you've done it right if by the end of your 6, 8, 10, 10, or 12 rows, you have 87, 91 for a medium, 97 for a large, 103 for an extra large, or 109 for an extra large stitches on your needles. Okay, so for me, for a small, I'll know that I'm doing it correctly if I have 87 stitches by the end of it, right? And it makes sense because we're taking 2 stitches off of every row. Okay, so to start, so all we're going to do is begin with a decrease. So I'm just going to do a basic knitting decrease. So insert my needle into 2 stitches and do a knit. Like that. Oh. Like that. Okay. So now it's that we've done our decrease, we're going to continue the pattern like normal until we get to the end. When we get to the end, we will do a decrease on the last 2 stitches. Okay? So for me, I have finished row 8. I will work on row 9, row 10, row 11, row 12, row 13, and row 14. So at the end of row 14, which is 6 rows for me, I will meet you there, right? I will, for you, depending on the size of your sweater, I will meet you when you have completed your 6, your 8, your 10, 10, or your 12 rows. Okay, so we're going to continue the pattern like normal. So just a tip, I finished my first row. This is the end of my first row. We have the last 2 stitches. We're just going to do a decrease on these last 2 stitches. Okay. So remember, a decrease on the beginning and the end of every row. Okay, that, and just do a decrease. Okay, like that. So now we've done our first row. I'm going to turn around and begin our second row. So for the second row, the same thing, a decrease at the beginning and a decrease at the end. Okay, so here's a decrease. So there's my decrease at the beginning. I'm going to continue the pattern. Once I reach the end, I'm going to do a decrease for the last 2 stitches. Turn it over, the first 2 stitches on the third row, do a decrease, continue the pattern to the end, a decrease on the last 2 stitches, turn it over, and repeat. Okay, so I'm going to continue that, and I will meet you at the end of my 6 rows. And I will meet you at the end of your 6, your 8, your 10, or your 12 rows. Okay? So here we are at the end of my 6 rows. You would have completed the number of rows that you need to complete. Once you're done that, we did our final decrease here, and we turned our work around. So now we are ready to go for the next part. What we're going to do is, it's quite similar to what we just did, except we're going to do a decrease on every other row. So the pattern says to work 9 rows if you're doing a small. If you're doing a medium, it's 9, a large, a 9, extra large, an 11, or an extra large, 13 rows, okay? So for me, I'm doing a small, so that's 9. So I'm going to work 9 rows because I'm doing a small, and I'm going to decrease 1 stitch at each end of next and every following alternate row. So you're going to do the same thing as well. We're going to decrease 1 stitch at the beginning and the end of each alternate row, and we're going to continue the pattern in the same way where we left off, okay? So we're going to begin with a decrease. And continue the pattern like normal. So just to give you an idea, the last row that I completed was row 14. So I'm going to be working on row 15 now. So this right now is row 15. Okay, so it says for me to work 9 rows. So I'm going to be working rows 15, which is this one, 16. Then we're going to go back to row 1, row 2, row 3, row 4, row 5, row 6, row 7. So I'm going to finish off on row 7. So at the end of my row 7, I will meet you back here. Okay, so in terms of which rows that we're going to do our decreases on, again, an idea for me, it will be row 15, which is this one. I'm going to do a decrease at the beginning and the end of the row, just like how we've done previously. Then for row 16, I'm not going to do any decreases. I'm just going to follow the pattern all the way straight through. Then after row 16, row 1, I'm going to do my decreases. Row 2, I'm not. Row 3, I will. Row 4, I'm not, etc. Okay, so I will meet you after I've completed my 9 rows, which for me will be at the end of my row 7, okay? I will meet you once you've completed the number of rows that you need to complete. So here we are. I've completed my 13 centimeters that I needed to complete. If you're doing a small, it's 13, a medium, it's 15, a large, 18, an extra large, 18, and an extra large, 19 centimeters from here to here. Okay, so I've done my 13 centimeters because I'm doing a small. Also, I double checked my stitches. Once again, if I am doing a small, I should have 77 stitches, which I do. If you're doing a medium, 81, a large, 87, an extra large, 91, and an extra large, 95 stitches. Okay, so I have 77 stitches on mine because I'm doing a small, so I am good. So once you completed this, your piece should look something, so that's what it looks like right now. We're going to move on to the next step, okay? So for the next step, we're going to divide it into 3 little sections. And the next step is to begin working and shaping the neck, okay? So let's do that.